At this time, I'd love to invite up my very good friend and colleague, Michelle Sarche. Move this. I joked to the people when I put on my microphone that I had a pocket here, and you saw how well that pocket worked. My battery fell out, and I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you.
There's my glasses. I will not be able to do this without my glasses. So Michelle is here as not only, like I said, a very good friend and colleague. I've known you for, I don't even know, like maybe 15 years?
Yep.
I met Michelle when I was on the National Indian Childcare Association. How many of you are familiar with NICA? Is NICA in the house? Where's NICA? Okay, all right, NICA's in the house. Oh, there you, yes, okay, I saw you earlier. I just wanted to make sure, okay. So the National Indian Childcare Association, I also was a board of director for a long time. I was the chair and the secretary also for a long time, and that's where I met Michelle. Michelle was looking for a partnership through the Tribal Research Center and had met with NICA. I think we were in Washington, D.C. for a conference. Yeah. And we have stayed in contact and communication ever since. And very, very happy to be a part of TRC. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Well, hello everybody. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm honored to be up here on this first day and this first session of your gathering here. I would say that I come here first and foremost as a mom. My kids are 17 and 19. The 19-year-old just finished his first year at college. And as Kim was sharing, we met about 15 years ago when they were about 2 and 4, and when they were in childcare. And the work that I do is very much influenced by those experiences of being a parent with young children in childcare and seeing how much heart and soul and effort went into supporting my children, raising them with love and care and concern so that I could pursue my career and do my work. I was at the University of Colorado in the Anschutz Medical Campus and the Centers for American Indian and Alaska Native Health when we met. I am a tribal citizen of the Lakota Band of Ojibwe tribe from Wisconsin, and I'm trained as a clinical psychologist. I worked for 27 years at the University of Colorado, and I retired on December 1st, but that was for a short while, really only a matter of minutes. And then I took a new position with the University of Nebraska and the Buffett Early Childhood Institute, where I'm very fortunate to be able to continue my work on the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center. And I really didn't think of it so much as leaving where I had been, but really bringing in a new set of partners to the work that I have been honored and blessed to do for a very long time, for 20 plus years, working specifically in early childhood. And I also come to you today as an aspiring storyteller. Over the course of our conversation here today, we're going to talk a little bit more about the work of the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center. But one of the things that we're doing is really trying to understand what are the priority issues for the tribal early childhood workforce. Not only the issues, but what are the priorities? What are people experiencing out there in the field today? What needs to be lifted up and shared so that the work of tribal early childhood centers the workforce as well as the children and families. And I'll just say that I'm also here as a researcher and a clinical psychologist, and with that, I really see alignment between clinical psychology and research in that they are both in pursuit of understanding. And they're really about peeling back the layers through trust and dialogue to reveal the underlying dynamics that result in the behaviors and actions that we see on the surface. And the desire to understand is driven by genuine love and care for the person or persons with whom we work, and faith that by understanding how things work, we might double down on what's working well, or perhaps more often modify, adjust, tweak, or overhaul entirely what is not, by identifying the source and addressing it by shifting practices or policies. I don't intend to read my notes the whole time I'm up here, but I had a particular moment of brilliance, I thought, in preparing for our conversation today. So I just kind of wanted to set that stage of defining what research is to me. People have a lot of associations around research, and the longer I've been doing this, I just feel that research is just another form of storytelling. And again, I'm here throughout the rest of today and tomorrow to listen and learn from all of you about, again, priorities for the early childhood workforce. So.
Thank you, Michelle. So when I first talked to Michelle, we just kind of had a nice dialogue of like, what are we going to talk about? Why am I inviting you? And one of the things that's really important in the conversation is that, like I told you, when I first went to work for the tribe, there wasn't a lot of information to support grants that I could potentially bring to the tribe. There wasn't a lot of information around culturally appropriate and informed practices. And so I was really kind of lost for a couple of years. And one of the things that occurred when we finally, years later, did have access through a lot of the advocacy of TCCAC, partnerships with the state of California, at the California Department of Education, California Department of Social Services, nutrition programs, and all of you, the tribes, and First Five California. And we would then have access to apply for grants, but it would have to be evidence-based practices. And I'm getting off script, but I'm kind of leading into it, is that we had to choose from certain evidence-based practices that had never been studied or researched or normed in tribal communities, because that's how it was written into the expectation of the funding. And I always pushed back on that, because one of the things that I've learned as an advocate is you have to push back. You have to be the squeaky wheel. You have to ask hard questions, and you have to sometimes create discomfort for people to hear. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. I have a joke that whenever I would show up at the offices, sometimes people would be like, Kim's in the house, Kim's coming. And it's kind of, then I would take offense to it, but now I kind of go, okay, it's a compliment. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you come from a perspective of working with tribes.
Yeah.
So tell us more about what is TRC? What's the history? Why is it that TRC was founded? And how does it support what we want to do?
Sure. So the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center, and you see our logo, and you can get to our website through that QR code. We've been funded since 2005, so for 20 years, which is really hard to believe that it's been that long. But we're funded by the Administration for Children and Families, or ACF, the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation, in particular, OPRE. And we have been funded since 2005 to grow the field of early childhood research in partnership with tribal communities. And the TRC was funded back in 2005 in response to the fact that there was very little research, as Kim is alluding to, that was specific to early development in tribal communities, and certainly probably even less as it relates to early care and education programs like Head Start, home visiting, and Childcare. And so the TRC was really funded to address that lack of research-based understanding about how those programs can best support development in early development in tribal communities. And so we do that in a variety of ways. First and foremost, we partner with Head Start, home visiting, and childcare program leaders, such as Kim, to really ensure that our work is grounded in the priorities of those programs and communities. And the work that we do is co-created from the ground up. We figure out together what kinds of research are we going to do and how are we going to do it. We really also build the research community. So we host a child development conference ourselves, the Native Children's Research Exchange Conference that we've hosted this year will be 15 years in a row. And one of the things that has held research on Native children's development, not just in early childhood, but throughout development back, is the fact that there are very few researchers who are themselves Native, who come from the communities where the children and families do. So a lot of our work has also focused on really supporting the career development of Indigenous scholars so that they're leading the way forward in research. Another thing that has held research back and that we're trying to address is the fact that the measures, the way we assess and understand young children's development or parenting or children's development or the quality of classroom interactions, again, is because very few of those measures have been developed with tribal ways of knowing, tribal ways of being and understanding in mind. They've really been developed more from kind of a Western scientific tradition and for children and families not in tribal communities. And they just don't always map onto our understandings of what is important for children's development. So we're really working to address research workforce issues. We're working to build research community and to develop some of the tools of research in ways, again, that are aligned with tribal ways of knowing and being. So.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. And I know that one of the things that we've worked a lot on is the community of learning approach. Mm-hmm. Can you explain more about what that is and how we do that?
Yes. So I have learned in life in many ways that you don't know what you don't know. And so our communities of learning are, and I'll get back to how this connects to communities of learning, but our communities of learning, they are virtual and in-person spaces for us to come together, us as researchers, us as tribal early care and education program leaders, our federal partners, researchers nationwide who have done work on children's development. They're virtual spaces as well as in person for us to come together and again, do that co-creation process. What are the priorities for our research and how can we do our research? So really design it and disseminate it again in ways that make sense for the communities and the programs that we seek to serve. And the reason that I say that, I've learned that I don't know what I don't know is inevitably I can have the best ideas for research, either what we're going to do or how we're going to do it. And once we, engage in dialogue and conversation, those, questions that I thought were, so well designed, those inevitably shift when we get feedback from our partners who, again, are working on the front lines of early care and education, who share with us the ways that does or does not map on, to their priorities or the way they do their work. So that is our community of learning approach. And I would say that it's very relationship-based. It has to be a safe space where people can engage in authentic dialogue and do some of the pushback that you're mentioning, Kim, you know, in respectful and kind and loving ways, and let us know what's not working.
Yeah, and I can attest to that because I've been in several of the communities of learning, and I have to tell you that, and my background is direct service. I mean, I started working in early care and education when I was 18, and it was just by really accident. I started as a teacher's assistant because I needed to work, and a family that I knew opened up a childcare center and asked me that summer if I would be interested in working there. And I was having a break from college. I still didn't really have a direction, so I started there as a teacher's assistant, and that's how I started in the field. I never left. I actually went back probably about 10 years later. Yeah, it was 10 years later, and bought that preschool, and that was the preschool that I opened as my own preschool and brought my children with me to work. So I was very intimidated when I went into this Tribal Research Center community of learning. I don't know if we've really actually talked about that. And, you know, I walked in and there's these, you know, these people that have like all these, you know, different acronyms and, you know, and they have all these like alphabet soup behind their name. And I just felt like, oh, do I really belong here? What am I doing in this room with researchers and professors? And I really felt heard. I felt respected, and I felt when I talked, people listened. Because I would be like, wait, you're gonna ask that question? Why? Why that you can't ask that question? And maybe if we did this or we thought about that, and they were like, oh, we never really thought about it that way, because there's so many people that come from a different perspective, and they come together in the community of learning, and they talk openly together about it. If you guys ever have an opportunity to participate, I encourage you, and don't feel intimidated by it because it matters. So I just wanted to share that because it was very intimidating.
Well, I just wanted to share that the researchers in the room were equally intimidated because, you know, you all are the ones out there doing what feels far more real at times than research. You are out there in the moment impacting children and families and really engaged, as I've heard over these decades that I've been honored to be in this space, engaged in nation building. And so I think, thinking back to those early years, again, we felt this intimidation of our own. As a researcher, as a tribal community member, you know, you don't want your research to sit on a shelf. You don't want the work that you do to not make a difference. And so I think I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you, Michelle. We've never talked about this. This is the first time we've talked about this. So this is Real Live with Kim and Michelle. So can you share also with us some examples of the research the TRC is working on right now and what you're learning from it?
Yes. So I had shared earlier that one of the things that has held back research on Native children's development has been a lack of measures that really capture like the key aspects of their development from a tribal perspective. And so one of our communities of learning is focused on early relational well-being. And our team, in, again, partnership with Tribal Head Start, Home Visiting, Childcare, and more recently we've been working with Tribal TANF programs as well, came together to come up with kind of a broad understanding of what are the things that caregivers, whether those are parents, childcare providers, other family members, what are the significant adults in young children's lives doing with young children to really promote their early relational well-being? And so for that work, we relied on a friend and colleague's work to develop. My friend and colleague Jessica Ulrich developed a model of, it's called the Indigenous Connectedness Framework. So really thinking about young children's relationship, not only within their families, but to their communities, to their culture and language, to the land, with their ancestors, and with their spirituality. And so we're working right now on developing that measure. One of the things that we did is engaged in something called group concept mapping, which sounds very technical and boring and dry. But if you have the chance to participate in it, what that involves is each member of this community of learning, from their perspective, comes up with examples of how children in their tribal communities, how the adults are helping children build those relationships in all those different realms. And we came up with, I don't know, probably 200 different relational practices that support children's connectedness and belonging.
Is that when we did all the little
Yes.
strips of paper?
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes. And so then we took all of these different practices that people came up with, like naming ceremonies, involving children in like food preparation and growing food and gathering food, learning their language, involvement in different cultural practices. So we took all of these 200 different practices and analyzed them, and they grouped together in 7 different groups. And so then we got to name those different groups and come up with a measure that is something that parents and teachers and others can complete, and really look at how what they're doing at home or in the classroom is supporting children's early relational well-being. And so that's one thing that we're working on right now. Another thing that we're working on is, and I alluded to this earlier, our interviews. We're doing a study of the tribal early childhood workforce, a qualitative study. So instead of having people fill out surveys and rate things, we're interviewing people, sitting down with them and having them share, people such as yourselves, share from your perspective, what's going on in the early childhood workforce right now? What are the key priorities? What are the needs? What are the successes and challenges from the perspective of a director, from the perspective of classroom teachers, and all the staff who are involved in making tribal early childhood programs work? And so we're doing those interviews right now. And like I said, I'm really an aspiring storyteller. And we've conducted 18 of those interviews so far. Our goal is to conduct 50 of them with tribal early childhood workforce members across the country, and really surface from those interviews what are the cross-cutting issues. And so we're wanting to learn about how things are going for directors, administrators, coordinators, classroom staff, the program as a whole. Yeah.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And this is broken out into different community of learning groups. And so through the participants, which were advisors in the advisory group, people can choose which groups they want to work on. And so you do have a lot of involvement throughout the year.
Right.
And I'm just curious, because I haven't asked you in a long time, are there still any openings on that advisory group, or is it full right now?
Our doors are always open to people who want to get involved in the work of the TRC, and there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved. You can be directly involved in the research activities. So like I said, I'll be here today and tomorrow doing interviews for anybody who would like to contribute their wisdom and knowledge and share their story. You can serve on our steering committee. You could be a member of a community of learning. We also teach a course at Johns Hopkins. So the TRC is a partnership with 5 universities: University of Colorado, Michigan State University, the Brazelton Touchpoint Center at Harvard, and Child Trends, and then the Johns Hopkins Center for Indigenous Health. And so we teach a course, Early Childhood Research, in partnership with tribal communities, and provide scholarships. That's an online 2-credit course. And so I'd be happy to share, I have a table out there, I'd be happy to share how you can apply to receive a scholarship to participate in that course. And then there's our conference also, and that will be in September. And our conference is not just for researchers, but again, for people who are working in child development programs in tribal communities. And both the course, the communities of learning, and the conference are really ways of, along the lines of your conference theme, braiding our respective sources of knowledge and understanding to really support child development, health, well-being, and thriving in tribal communities.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really curious about more of the messages for the field. Like, what happens with this information? How does it support?
Yeah. So we work very closely with the Administration for Children and Families, or ACF. That's who funds our work. And so we really want to make sure that the federal program offices understand what it is that we're learning. One of the things that we did through the TRC is we helped to lead the first nationally representative study of tribally run Head Start programs. And that study was carried out in 2015 and again in 2019. And what we learned, and again, it probably won't be any surprise to all of you, but just the importance of tribal language and culture in Native children's development. And so really being able to have the numbers behind what we already knew to be true, and to be able to share those with people in positions that make decisions about how programs, what program funding can be used for, and what kinds of things are prioritized. And so there was a recent, I would say, I think in 2024, information memorandum from the Office of Head Start, really supporting Indigenous knowledge in how tribal Head Start programs, for example, the kinds of curriculum they can use, and what counts as, quote, evidence, as you're talking about, right. And really uplifting Indigenous knowledge. And I'd like to think that the work that we did that showed, the vast majority, nearly 100% of parents of Head Start children see learning language and culture as one of the most important things that children can do in Head Start.
Yeah, I agree with you. Was that the FACES study?
Yes.
So if you guys go to the website, there is information about the FACES study on the website, and it's a great information. And also what is important out of it too is just the terminology of lived experience has, I think, come a lot out of that as well, because we often talk about if you bring somebody into your programs that maybe don't have the credentials or the units or the credits, but they have lived experience, they're experts. And so it's justifiable to bring them in to support your program for language and culture. And so a lot of the work that you have done has supported that, and you hear that terminology a lot more now.
Yep. And you talked about pushing back. Something that was a real hot button issue is how quality is measured in classrooms. And there was one particular tool, the Classman Assessment Scoring System.
I almost said that, but I didn't know if I should, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, the class. And so one of our communities of learning has really been examining how the class does and doesn't work in tribal settings, and really coming up with some guidelines for how individuals who are using the class can use it in a more culturally attuned and aligned ways, as well as developing some new measures of classroom quality that are completely separate from the class, and again are more grounded in how tribal ways of knowing and being.
Right.
So I think research is just another tool for really surfacing wisdom and knowledge and bringing it forward and using it to move our field forward, to question what needs to be questioned, to redesign and shift where that's needed, and again, to move things forward.
Thank you. And one of the things that TCCAC has worked on is really not only just the tool, but your observers, those that are doing your reviews or observations or assessments, and there really has to be a not one size fits all in the approaches. There has to be relationships built, understanding about the community. Before you go in and use the tool, you need to understand what you're observing, and that can't happen without relationships. So we're hoping we're making an impact along with people like you.
Yeah.
So the next question that I have is, and you talked about this, is integrating traditional Indigenous knowledge and practices with modern methods to strengthen the future of Native children and families. And in our theme, we talked about this too, is building and braiding our knowledge. And I know that you've talked about this a little bit, but is there anything else that you think is really important to add to that conversation? That what more can we do? How can we be proactive?
So one of the projects that I've been working on in the last year is a home visiting project. It's the Center for Indigenous Research Collaborations and Learning in Home Visiting, and there's no good project title unless you can have a catchy acronym, and the acronym for that is Circle HV. And maybe that's not catchy, I don't know. It has the word circle in it. But that project is funding research practice partnerships. So individual home visiting programs are partnering with researchers to use the tools of research to really deepen their understanding of how things are going in their programs. And one of the things that we were tasked with doing is really helping those research practice partnerships ground their work in Indigenous research methodologies. And so Indigenous research methodologies are really, again, along with the theme of your conference, we are, as researchers, really thinking about how we can braid Indigenous wisdom and knowledge with the tools, again, of like Western scientific traditions. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what we have learned about Indigenous research methodologies that might relate to how you all are here these next few days. And so through our work, we really surfaced 5 key principles of Indigenous research methodologies. And I just wanted to share those with you to the extent that they're an inspiration in the work that you do. And again, want to share that one of those was relationality, really recognizing our inherent interconnectedness to one another. And relational accountability, that means upholding our responsibility to the people and the communities that we serve. And I would imagine as, providers, as program leaders, that you, consider relational accountability in your own work. And reciprocity, and that is giving of ourselves and honoring the gifts of others. Also respect, holding in deep regard partner community cultures, lived experiences, ways of knowing and being, and priorities, as well as place, honoring that cultural and ancestral wisdom that inform our ways of knowing and being, understanding and respecting that those are grounded in place. There's 574 federally recognized tribes. That doesn't count all of the state recognized tribes, the tribal communities without any federal or state recognition, urban communities. There's an incredible diversity with respect to Indigenous ways of knowing. And so just really appreciating in our research and work that when we say Indigenous ways of knowing, that's a plural, that is really connected to specific cultures, communities, and places. And so I just offer that to you all again, as you go into these next few days of thinking about the ways that you're braiding your own wisdom and knowledge and understanding of children's development with what you may be using or practicing with the various curricula that you use, for example, or, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think that at TCCAC, we've learned to do that. And those of you that have participated either in, see a couple new people that have joined us, hello, new people and friends. And TCCAC always asks the question, you'll hear a lot about this at this conference through our work with Brazelton Touchpoint Center. We have a grant that we have in partnership with them, and it's through OPRE, and we're working on Tribal CCDF grantee, just gaining that perspective of where there's gaps in services, cost of care models, and what we can do to support the work, and we're gaining more knowledge. And so today is a day when we have interest in what's happening in tribal communities and a desire to be able to co-design opportunities. And so for Michelle's work that we've done with TRC, the work we do with Brazelton Touchpoint Center, the work that we're doing with the California Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, with Pyramid Model, I know Sue's somewhere in the room. You'll hear a lot about that. We also have Nika here, who also is interested in partnering. So you're gonna hear a lot about that. And I'm just mentioning that because we get an opportunity to say how we want to be involved. It's not, we need you to do this, check the box and sign here. It's, what is it that you as a tribal, as a nation, as an organization, as a program, what do you need to know? Where's the gaps in your knowledge? How can we support that? Versus, we want to research with you, we're going to own the research, and we're not going to follow back up. That's what used to happen. That's where there's the fear in partnering, because you don't know what's happening with your information. You don't know whose hands it's going to fall into, and you don't know how it's ever going to come back to your own community and help. And so that's where these shifts are happening, and that's why it's important for us to talk about it. I digress. So tell us a little bit more about how we can get involved in TRC. You mentioned it a bit, but what else can we do? What is there that we can do now to partner with you?
Well, first of all, I would love to get to know people while I'm here. So I have a table out there, and just invite you to stop by and visit, and just ask your questions and learn about how you might specifically get involved in our work, whether it's participating in an interview, if you're so inclined to share your story and your wisdom while I'm here this week, or also to learn about the other things that we have going on, such as the course. Again, that's a 2-credit course, and the scholarship applications are being accepted through mid-May. And that course, that has students at the graduate level who are participating from across the country. So it's a wonderful opportunity to build your own network and connections with people who share in your curiosities and desire for learning and understanding. And so I can tell you more about those scholarship applications. And those 2 credits can then be applied to a certificate in American Indian Health from Johns Hopkins. And they also have some master's programs there as well. But you don't have to commit to any of that. It's just an opportunity to start with a 2-credit class. And so we call that the TRC Summer Institute. And then we have our conference coming up September 18th and 19th. And we have a listserv, so if you'd like to be added to our listserv, that's where I'll be sharing information about the conference, and we try to provide travel support for as many people as possible. And that's a very interdisciplinary conference. We have it every odd September, so we last had it in 2023. And somebody who is the director of early learning at a museum in Denver came to the conference. And we're always very open to anybody who wants to come. So I wasn't quite sure what somebody who was directing early learning, I guess the early learning piece, but at a museum, that was something brand new. But this year, the opening, well, our conference is just 2 days, so we have a dinner on the opening night. And that dinner is going to be held at the Clifford Still Museum, and it's going to be an exhibit of Clifford Still's work that is being curated by the Colville Head Start children. So Clifford Still was an artist who was in residence near the Colville tribe in Washington. And so we're just really excited to have Head Start children curating that exhibit and for our conference attendees to be there at the opening. So just a little plug for that. And we also do a virtual learning circle series. And a couple of years ago, actually, members of the California Tribal Childcare Association participated in that. Frida, I think you were part of that. And they shared their work on land-based learning in early childhood. And so we try to use the platforms that we have to really be a space that voices and wisdom and knowledge from practice can be lifted up and shared very broadly about what matters for young children's development in tribal communities. So those are some ways that you can get involved. And again, I would really be happy to visit with you while I'm here. So I see this as the beginning of a conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. One final question, and then maybe we can open it up for questions from our participants. Just because this really stood out to me is how can ACF support partnerships between researchers and American Indian Alaska Native early learning programs?
I feel that partnership work takes a long time to build. As I said, we've been doing this work for 20 years, and our work couldn't happen if it weren't for the connection and the relationship and the partnerships that we've built over all of those years. So just like the work that you do in your programs, these are long-term investments to build networks, to build practices. And so I would say that that investment, that we've been very grateful for ACF investing in our collective work over all of these years. And I also would say that I think it's incumbent on anybody who's seeking to serve and support tribal children, families, and communities to grow their own capacity and skill in understanding and serving tribal communities. That can be through lived experience, and I think most importantly, it comes from humility. My work is really guided by the mantra of walk softly and listen carefully. I've been to a lot of tribal communities. I'm a tribal member myself, but I am always humbled and amazed that I am always learning something new. And so, and that comes through listening. And I think that I've been fortunate to work with federal partners over all these years who are themselves interested in walking softly and listening carefully. And I know that's not the experience for everybody, but I feel that if it weren't for that, attitude and approach and way of being, that our work couldn't be where it is today.
Thank you. And I said that was the last question, but I have another question.
Okay.
You guys know me so well. I just can't leave this conversation without asking you, because I kind of alluded to it and talked about it a little bit, about the political climate and how it's impacted us, and how it can be really stressful and daunting, and you were really, giving me that confidence in what we can do together. Can you tell us more about, just some perspective?
Well, that could be another session altogether. But I would say that it's also sort of like the serenity prayer, trying to think about what it is that you have control over and what you don't, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I would say that something that I am leaning into as some of our grants, we're getting the termination notices, and that's very painful. It's very sad and it's very disheartening. And as one of our young scholars, and that's some of our work that right now has been defunded because, having diverse voices, including diverse voices, that's not a priority, I guess, right now. But as one of our young scholars shared, our work is not about, it takes grants, it takes funding to do the work, but what we've done is built a community, and our community will endure, and the connections will endure, and the relationships will endure. And so I guess what I find myself leaning into is we need each other more than ever. And we will get to the other side of all of this eventually. And I think staying connected and grounded in our relationships and our community while we weather these storms is just essential. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. It made me emotional to hear you speak that way, because I feel from all of you that stress, and all of us and some of us in the room have been directly impacted in huge ways. So I love that idea that we remember that we're here, we're family. It may not take away everything, but it does mean something. So that's why it's important that we have moments like these.
And I would just also say that we can't be foolish and naive and put our head in the sand, but we also sort of have to manage just how much we open ourselves up to the news every day. And I think preserving those spaces for laughter and joy in those connections, I feel like connection and laughter and joy and leaning into our indigenous ways of knowing our language and our culture, all of that to me feels right now like an act of resistance. And so I think there are just things that are within our control to not be taken from us. So,
thank you for that.
Yeah.
We do have a few minutes for questions, and so if anybody has a question, Jenny's running to come get the mic. I can see her. I was going to get up, but thank you, Jenny. Please raise your hand. Jenny will bring you the mic, and don't be shy. Frida's going to start us. Okay, good. Thank you. We have a few questions.
I don't know if this question is for you, Michelle. Maybe it's for TCCAC and the Dream. But as you were talking and telling the story of what your path has been, I was going through like my own reflection journey and how it like connects to TCCAC. I imagined the individuals in the room with you telling their stories, right? And so I could hear them, I could feel them. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking about my emotions and what it must have felt like for them to be able to tell that story and actually be heard. Mm-hmm. And so then we go into the so what, right? And then you gave us the so what. You told us the 5 components that you came up with that are, you nailed it, mm-hmm. right? Those things are so important to me as a mom, mm-hmm. to make sure that those things are happening for my kids. And an auntie to the community, mm-hmm. so important. And to all of our children, so important. But then it feels like it stops. Mm. It feels like, okay, we have this beautiful information, and what do we do with it, right? Like, how do we get it to that next level so that our moms can be home with their kids, and so that the aunties and the providers are part of the village, and that they get all the things that they need to be able to bring that into our children's world. You know, it's right there.
Yeah.
The research says it. We need to do something with it. Mm-hmm. So it's like again, my question is, so now what? Like, how do we get it to that next level so that we're not stuck in having the same conversation in 5 years? You know what I mean? Like, what do we need to do to work with you to make it level up?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say that getting out of our respective silos is really important. I think on a one-to-one basis. It's being open to relationships and connections with people that you hadn't envisioned you had anything in common with, perhaps at all. You know, you do your thing, I do my thing, and you know, it might be like on the same topic, but you do it in this way and I do it in that way. And so I think really being open to those relationships that start one by one by one. I think it also is, I know that we at the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center, it's important to us that our work stay connected to what is happening in tribal programs and with tribal children and families. I will say that it is a challenge because it's a natural tendency that we each end up in our respective silos. Us, you know, researchers in academic spaces. I just came from an academic child development research conference. But we are endeavoring to participate in meetings like this, the National Indian Head Start Directors Association meeting, and also to share products that are actionable and useful to people serving tribal children and families. Some of the work that we've done has been on developmental screening and what we learned about how to use the existing and available tools in a good way and a productive way with children and families in tribal communities. So it's something that we're mindful of and can always do more of and better of. And again, I think that happens through relationship and connection. So.
I think there was a question over here. Thank you, Frida.
Hi, I'm Deanna with Navajo Nation. So we are a tribal lead agency for under ACF Office of Childcare. So hearing the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center, not familiar with it. And so of course I'm on ACF website. Where is she at? So are you under Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was trying to look for the research center, and I was looking through, are you Office of Head Start, Office of Early Childhood Development? So I was looking around, so that was just a clarification question, because when I hear that there's looking at best practices, research-based, and I thought, okay, I need to know a little bit more about that, so I'll connect with you later. Thank you.
That would be great, and we've been really honored and blessed to work with people from Navajo Nation in various aspects of our work, so come visit me.
Are you here through Thursday?
I'm here through tomorrow.
I thought so. So,
Yes.
Michelle has a table out in the lobby. She'll be here today, tomorrow,
Yes.
and so yeah.
Yes, today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions?
I think it kind of relates to the first question about just like the practicality. So like when you say you're developing measures and all of that, like, so we're talking about measures that say if like a DRDP or ASQ that can translate into individualizations and really measure, but through native standards and native. Yeah. And then how does that work, like if you're in a Head Start that is very like, these are our grants and these are our measures and we have to meet them, or like if you're doing like, I think it used to be ECHRS and now class, and integrating that in, but still having like maybe the administration and the whole system still kind of geared toward these other standards, you know, and them not wanting to worry about funding and just having the whole, I guess, class or the whole building really kind of shift their perspective, but feel safe shifting it, where they won't lose funding, or outside people can come in and they can be confident going, no, we are hitting what you're requiring, but with these things.
well, I know that we're at time and you have another speaker, but I'll just say that I think that's where, you know, researchers perhaps can tell the story that others don't have to put their neck out on the line to tell. And I think research it's about the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of understanding that evolves over time. It's not fixed. And so that is something that we hope to do as researchers, is to be able, you know, to have the quote evidence. It's another form of evidence, right? your words and the things that people say at tribal consultations with the Office of Head Start or Office of Childcare, that's evidence, that all matters. But then having the research to back that up, and then also for researchers who are not, running programs, can be out there having those conversations and, again, pushing back where we're hearing that pushback is needed to deepen understanding and increase the meaning and significance of the work that we do. So.
And I know we do have Josh coming in a second, but I just want to add to that, if you don't mind. As a center director, I ran into that all the time, especially once we did get CCTR, which is the infant and toddler contract, and early Head Start childcare partnership. We were required to meet certain regulations, but I would always say, if we're supporting the individual children, and this is the best way to support this individual child, then that's what we're going to do, because that's best practice. And if I need to customize the curriculum, even though you might be using this creative curriculum that is evidence-based practice, if you're meeting the individualization, you're following the curriculum.
Yeah.
So anybody that knows me and people that know me well, I don't live in a black and white world. I live in a lot of gray. And I have people laughing at me, mostly fiscal people. But anyway, I just really think the importance of it is that you know these children and families best. How do you learn to advocate for them and still get the money?
Yeah.
And that's the trick. And you have to push back.
Yeah.
You have to say, this is what's best for this child. This is how I'm meeting it. I'm still following creative curriculum.
Yeah.
But I'm also adapting it to be culturally informed based off of what this child and this family need. And so sometimes you have to use the lingo,
Yeah.
but you also do what you know is best, because that's what parents do. I mean, parents don't go home with their baby and they're pushed a curriculum and they say, this is what you have to follow in order to raise your child best.
Sure.
You figure it out. And so there's no curriculum that's perfect. And there's no tool that's perfect. At least that's how I approach it.
Sure, absolutely.
So you have to kind of get uncomfortable.
In terms of like New Zealand has integrated a lot of Maori stuff into the national system, and I don't know if that waters it down, but I think it's nice to have some of the priorities and culture into the national system, so it's not always pushing back and justifying why we do
Yes.
things this way. It's just part of the national knowledge.
Right.
Did you guys all hear that
Sorry.
in the back? She was talking about other countries that might be better at this than the United States. That, for instance, in New Zealand, they use the Maori, knowledge and experiences in their curriculum and approaches, and it's widely accepted. And so why don't we do that in the United States? Well, we could tell you a whole bunch of stories why, but we're not going to do that today, and you all know them. Yes.
So it's not always justifying why we're doing things the way it's just an accepted practice of this is working.
But if we just go along compliantly, nothing will change.
That's it.
We could talk forever, but we've got to go. So thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
And it's just an honor to have you here.
Thank you.